So at this time, we'll go ahead and call the audit committee to order. And Anoka, why don't you call the roll and make sure we have our folks here?
Okay, and Chair Parker, I know you are here. Governor Temple? Here. Governor Carter?
Here.
Governor Frost? Here. Governor Kuntz?
Here.
Governor Stavros? And Governor Webster. Chair Parker, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The first item on our agenda is approval of our minutes from the June 21, 2012 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. The next item that we have is the report from Florida A&M University Division of Audit and Compliance Corrective Action Plan. Derry, I don't know if you want to introduce this first, and then you can bring up the chair of the audit committee, or however you want to do it. You go ahead and...
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to make sure that Mr. Givens was in the audience, and I know he had a PowerPoint presentation that he wanted to use.
Is Rick here?
Yes, yes, he is.
Okay, and he's...
And just a brief introduction, the members of the board and the members of the audit committee will recall that the Board of Governors had recommended after the issuance of a whistleblower investigation last year that the university, that Florida A&M University take on certain corrective actions. Mr. Givens reported out to us in June at our audit committee meeting, and we invited him back here to discuss further actions that the university has taken in response to that particular investigation, its findings. So we also have today here Trustee Carl White, who is the chair of the audit committee at Florida A&M University. So, without any further ado, I'll cede the podium to Mr. Givens and to Mr. White.
Thank you very much. I guess while Rick has come, we do want to extend a very special welcome to you. Carl, we appreciate your being here. And I know it's a big sacrifice considering that you guys met last week, but we appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, good afternoon. As a result of some findings that the university's Division of Audit and Compliance had not followed professional standards in performing internal audits, the university contracted with Ernst & Young to re-perform 8 audits that were deemed to be not done in accordance with audit standards or deficient in some area, as well as to assess the investigations to determine if they had been done in accordance with applicable standards, whether they were done objectively, and whether they had been adequately documented. And the first of these audits had to do with the bank reconciliation process, and there were a number of findings that were reported as a result of that. The bank reconciliation procedures should be strengthened by the timely preparation and review of and defining the aged checks, and it was recommended that one overarching policy be adopted to govern all bank reconciliation procedures. It also recommended that the policies and procedures provide for specific roles and responsibilities, expected timelines for completion and review, and the handling of outstanding checks and deposits. The university's response has been to update the bank reconciliation procedures and to include that these procedures will be reviewed on an annual basis to continue to improve those. The monthly bank reconciliations were not completed in a timely manner, and the preparation and approval dates had not been consistently documented. The recommendation included to give renewed focus to automating the bank reconciliation process. Currently, the bank reconciliation process is mainly manual. The university's response is to attempt to complete all bank reconciliations by the 25th of the month following the close of the month, and to resume efforts to automate the bank reconciliation process. More specifically...
Rick, is this going while you're talking? Do you want to catch us up to this, or this is... I'm asking.
Let's see.
Is that part of your presentation, or is that later?
That is part of my presentation.
And why don't you catch us up to where you are?
I don't have the
You don't
clicker.
have a clicker. Can someone help us with that?
Kinsley.
Left with the clicker.
Oh, here, it's on the floor. This just moves it forward. It's just a wireless. You don't have to point it at anything in particular. The other one goes back.
Okay. More specifically on the bank reconciliations, had to do with the handling of the stale dated checks and the deposits. It was found that there were outstanding checks that were aged in excess of 365 days, and the procedures for resolving those were incomplete. Also, on deposits, there were deposits that were not being resolved on a timely basis. They found where some deposits were outstanding for more than 30 days before being resolved. And then also that the reconciling items that were carried on the bank reconciliation spanned more than 1 year. Some had been outstanding for a longer period of time, and the supporting documentation for those items had not been adequately documented. And the recommendation for all those findings all were the same, that management should reinstitute its procedure for periodic meetings to get all parties involved so that the items can be researched, adequately documented, and resolved in a timely manner. And so the university will re-implement this process. It'll just be either a weekly meeting or a monthly meeting, depending on what's needed to get the people together, to get the different departments that we need to resolve those items. There were a number of findings related to the athletics revenue. These included that adequate documentation was not maintained for parking and program sales, and it was recommended that the university document retention policy procedures to include the specific documentation that should be in the file. So the university will continue to review and enhance its procedures. A tracking mechanism has been developed to track all revenue sources, and also would note that the parking revenue for the current year has been transferred to the boosters for handling, and our office did meet with the boosters and review those policies and procedures and found that those were generally adequate to provide controls over those collections. We also, it was noted that there are inaccuracies found on the inventory control sheets that were used to document program and advertise, or program and parking sales, and that the change sheets that were used to document the cash that were given to those collecting the parking revenues were sometimes inaccurate as well. It was recommended that the university develop policies and procedures for the sale of parking tickets and provide additional training to those involved in the process. Currently, the university has developed procedures for managing these sales and will provide additional training when the time permits. There's also a finding that related to the revenue accounts not being designed to consistently identify the game revenue. There's a report, an ACES report that was used to document the deposits that were sent from the athletics department to the cashier's office, and it was found that the report did not agree sometimes to the game day support, that is the source documentation, or to the general ledger. It was recommended that the policies and procedures specified the general ledger accounts and map the accounts so that the revenues are consistently recorded. Currently, the university does have account codes that identify revenue collected for the home football games and will ensure that the revenues are properly recorded, and also a reconciliation process has been instituted to reconcile the reports in the cashier's office to the general ledger. Similar to this, it is a finding that related to the journal entry that was also prepared by the athletics department personnel, and it was found that the entry did not support the revenues that were collected in the general ledger, and so a reconciliation process has been instituted to provide that reconciliation. It was also reported that the duties of cash collection, preparing the deposit slip, and preparing the journal entries were not adequately segregated, and it's recommended that those duties be segregated, and the university has added staff to provide for an adequate separation of duties. Also related to the athletics revenue is that the vending permit contracts for the vendors who sell at the stadium did not have a standard rate that was charged, or the amounts due from the vendors was not adequately tracked. It was recommended that there be modifications to the standard contract terms, and that it should be reviewed by the athletics director and legal counsel, and to implement a process for tracking the amounts due. Currently, the contract is in the process of being modified, and the university has implemented a mechanism to track the amounts due from the vendors. There was also a finding related to the concessions contract. The terms were generally considered to be unfavorable to the university in that it was structured so that the university had an obligation if certain sales minimums were not met, and so the recommendation was to review that contract, and the contract has been reviewed. It's currently, we understand, has been signed and is retroactive back to July the 1st. There were a couple of items related to the use of the technology fee. It was found that the technology fee funds had not been adequately monitored and had not been compared to the budget amount or to the project amounts. It was recommended that the university implement a procedure to provide for the monitoring, and the university is currently monitoring on a monthly basis the revenue collected with the expenditures incurred for the specific projects. The university will implement a procedure to amend any budget as necessary should the project expenditure occur. It was also reported that there's not a control in place to validate that the recipients of the Bright Futures scholarships did not pay a technology fee with the Bright Futures Fund. The university will implement a control to do this. Currently, the tuition amount does not, or the Bright Futures doesn't cover the total tuition amount, so there have been no Bright Futures Fund that were actually used to pay the technology fee, but we will implement a control to prevent that in the future. There was one project that was funded from the technology fees that had not been approved by the president or the provost. The recommendation was to define the document retention policies and procedures and provide additional training to reiterate the importance of obtaining the required approvals. The university's response is that we will provide the additional training. We had a number of findings related to the textbook affordability. We saw that approximately 1/3 of the textbooks had not been adequately adopted and posted as required by the BOG regulations. It was recommended that the university enforce the deadline by rejecting the course book information request form submitted after the deadline unless the justification is submitted with it. Currently, the university has finalized a process, and all everything posted on the website has been documented. I'm sorry, that there has been something put on our website that is the best practices, and it's to be used by all the university staff. Academic Affairs will meet with each department to discuss the importance of meeting the requirements so that textbooks are adequately posted and the law is followed. It was also reported that textbooks had been posted without having all the information, such as the International Standard Book Number, copyright date, or published date. It was recommended that the university provide additional training and reiterate the importance of the required information being posted. The university has coordinated with Barnes & Noble to ensure that this information is posted. It was reported that the university does not reconcile the information that was put into the text aid system with the amount that's actually posted on the Barnes & Noble website. Currently, the university is verifying that any information input is verified by a second person to ensure that the correct information is posted. The course book request forms were not retained for the fall and spring 2011 terms, and also that it was reported that these forms were submitted through various means such as fax, online, or just hand delivery without using the standard form. It was recommended that the university develop a policy requiring that requests be submitted via a standard book request form, and also to define the document retention policies and procedures. The university's response is to accept only requests that are submitted on the standard form, and to update the procedures to ensure that the use of the standard form and the retention of those documents will be retained. The course book request form that was used did not capture all the information that was needed for justification of a new edition, and it was recommended that the form be updated, and the form will be updated to include all the information that's required.
Rick. Here.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
me. Yeah. What I'm going to ask you to do is, first I apologize for interrupting you. As you know, we've been working a little bit with our schedule based upon the governor's schedule, and it seems that he is on the property. The chair had asked me if I would allow you to continue until 10 till, which is where we are now. And what I'd ask that you do that. And I know you have a few more slides to go, and this has been very helpful to receive the information, but it is very detailed. What would be great for us is if you would kind of note where you are and come back.
Sure.
And when you come back, if you can kind of almost categorize the issues together so you don't have to go through each and every slide. And what I can do for the committee members is I can make sure you get copies of the slides so you know what's out there, and you can ask any more detailed questions. But it may be easier for us if you kind of, because we can see here you have kind of subject areas that you can cover.
Sure.
You can do it that way.
So just hit highlights.
Right. I mean, that would that would help us to deal with the issue.
Okay.
And then after that, we'll have the chair of the audit committee, Mr. White, come, and he can provide whatever comments and respond to any questions. But I'm going to at this point, I'm going to ask that we break with the audit committee meeting. My assumption is that the chair is going to resume with the governor in about 10 minutes, and we'll start with you coming up on deck first. So at this time, we'll take a break, and I assume we'll be ready to come back at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much.